Finally, I get to talk about this matchup. Metal Sonic from the game's continuity and Infinity Ultron from the MCU's What If series. These characters are usually compared through being, I guess, robots, who are really cool at their peaks, but usually fumble in the end by whoever's riding them at the time. But hey, they did get some recent honor in the projects like Marvel Rivals and, I guess, Death Battle. And since we hit the target in Mario vs Sonic, I feel like it's only fair we did this again. 500 likes and I'll cover Frieza vs Megatron. Anyways, let's get into this. Metal Sonic was always that guy to me.
It's too late.
Unfortunately, while he doesn't live up to his potential, thanks to the writers, I'll blame them every time, he still was pretty cool and had a pretty cool introduction. When he first fought Sonic in Sonic CD, he was built to be on par with Sonic. Metal does reach Sonic's superior speed in his fights as Neo Metal Sonic and Metal Overlord, both higher levels of power than his normal state. Metal Overlord also took the power of Super Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles to beat him in Sonic Heroes, but his best stuff comes from his showings of the comics, whereas Neo Metal Sonic, he could scrap on par with his Sonic after Sonic Forces happened, and is stated as Eggman's greatest creation, putting him above Infinite and the Death Egg final boss, which just keeps the scaling consistent with what I said in Sonic vs Mario. The basic summary of that scaling was the Egg Salamander could combat both Burning Blaze and Super Sonic, as well as empowered by the Emeralds, which was stated to create the Dream Eggman land that transcends dimensions. It's above the Infinite Multiverse and containing the 4th dimension, which would scale somewhere from 5th to 6th dimensional for these characters. Sonic and Metal Sonic by this point would be leagues beyond this tier, and with enough Chaos Energy, Metal could go into his Super Neo Metal Sonic form Prime 1 million and be stronger than everyone there. There was also a statement that he could beat Super Sonic. It makes sense, base Neo could scrap with Sonic, and with Super Sonic by this point, he should be leagues beyond his previous incarnations, like the one who fought Solaris and the Time Eater, and with Super Neo Metal probably upscaling both of them just from natural power creep, which should include the super dimensional statement from Solaris and the dimensional amps for the Time Eater, having Super Neo Metal Sonic reaching from the lowest 7th dimensional to 8th dimensional or complex multiversal, with both casually moving through time or appearing in 3 parts at time at once. The scaling would just massively amp from the previous baseline immeasurable speed scaling from at least Sonic Generations, if you don't agree with Sonic CD. Now, I would usually cover this hacks necessary to the discussion, since Metal does have some crazy hacks, but I'm going to leave that to the conclusion because of how weird this stat is in this specific fight. Just trust me, it gets crazy. Now, Ultron was always my favorite villain in the MCU. People hated on Age of Ultron for some reason, but to me it was the best Avengers film, and the one I rewatched all the time, so imagine me seeing the GOAT droid himself one-shot Thanos and be the cracked villain he always was meant to be.
15 minutes later.
Anyways, even back in his first appearance, Infinity Ultron was delivering his promise of global annihilation. For one thing, he literally soloed his own verse and blew up planets for fun, but even after that, Ultron was able to scrap with the Watcher, who was a 5th dimensional being in his own right that looked over the infinite multiverse, even overwhelming him to the point of breaking reality, eating a galaxy over him, and making a powered-up Watcher run away for his life. Now this already puts him in the 5th dimensional scale, obviously, with the Infinity Stones seemingly working outside of the home universe and not being depowered at all. It's likely he would have most of his abilities as normal. Now, he doesn't get much scaling later, except the Imminence. Basically, these evil Watcher guys that exist in a dimension even beyond what the Watcher usually does. He was able to hold them back for a long period of time and did better than the Watcher, but he ended up just getting one shot later, so he really just downscales from the 6th dimensional scale. And I guess I haven't covered it much, but in terms of speed, the Time Stone allows him to alter time, reverse it, and move without issue, but the higher dimensional characters like the Watcher have no real problem with time affecting them. You know, they exist beyond the timelines. As well, these characters can react to and perceive moving through time and space. Infinity Ultron upscales this casually, so he would just be above baseline immeasurable speed. Okay, so who would win in a fight? After comparing their stats, they seem pretty similar at first. Infinity Ultron was one-shot on slightly contending with 6th-dimensional beings, but Metal Sonic upscales, scaling leagues beyond 6th-dimensional scaling, and with the power creep being way more prevalent in the Sonicverse than the MCU, Metal would just upscale from the baseline immeasurable speed way more. The big contender in this fight, however, is the hacks. Infinity Ultron can use pretty much any ability outside his home universe, and Metal does have great abilities, but he doesn't exactly compare until we factor in Neo Metal's biodata scaling. And now we have a whole new problem. Because if Neo Metal Sonic copies all the abilities of Infinity Ultron, that just leaves the stat difference and Super Neo Metal Sonic and the superior skill, or versatility now. Basically, if Neo Metal copies all of the data from Infinity Ultron, he pretty much has all the advantages and Infinity Ultron just can't compare. So unfortunately this fight isn't a fair fight, so I guess I gotta put that in the title, so